Amen. Daniel chapter 7, picking up in verse 1, says, "The first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head while on his bed, and then he wrote down the dream telling the main facts. And Daniel spoke, saying, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of heaven were stirred up in the great sea, and the four great beasts came up from the sea, each different from the other. And in verse 4, the first was like a lion and had eagle's wings, and I watched, its wings were plucked off, and it was lifted up from the earth and made to stand like with 2 feet like a man. And a man's heart was given to it. And suddenly another beast, a second like a bear, it was raised up on one side and had 3 ribs in its mouth between its teeth, and said thus to it, Arise, devour much flesh. And in verse 6, after this I looked, and there was another like a leopard, which had on its back 4 wings of a bird. The beast also had 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. And after this I saw in the night vision, and behold, a 4th beast, dreadful and terrible, exceedingly strong. It had huge iron teeth. It was devouring, breaking in pieces, and trampling the residue with its feet. It was different from all the beasts that were before it, and had 10 horns. And in verse 8, I was considering the horns, and there was another horn, a little one, coming up among them, before 3 of the first horns were plucked out by the roots. And therein is this horn where eyes like the eyes of a man, and a mouth speaking pompous words. So that's pretty self-explanatory. We can move on, right? I'm obviously kidding here. Now, let's look at verse 1. Going back here, we need to understand a few things about this and the context in the book of Daniel for a moment. First of all, this happens in the first year of Belshazzar, and according to the very statements in this chapter and beyond, these are visions and prophetic visions that Daniel has at nighttime. So in chapters 1 through 6 of the book of Daniel that we faithfully studied verse by verse so far, we have seen the history of Daniel's life and the kingdoms that he has been a part of. Now we're getting what we would call an addendum to the history of his life. He's adding this on to the end of his sort of history, and he's giving us the prophetic nature of his ministry, separate and distinct from the history of his life. And that's exactly what he tells us in this chapter. So let me remind you, as we're reminded here in verse 1, that this is in the year of Belshazzar. So this goes back in time from the things that we've studied, even with the Medo-Persian Empire under Darius. And now we're going back to Belshazzar's reign, the first year of the reign of Belshazzar, that is. And I take the moment to say this. It's very important in our context. Daniel had a very, very, very unique ministry with world-dominating kings and their kingdoms. And in those kingdoms, he saw a different state of government, if you will. And so Daniel has a unique ministry in that he has a front row seat to the political agenda and arena of these nations, these world-dominating nations. And that's so important because it's not an arbitrary man with an arbitrary vision. It's a man that's so engaged in the political nature of the world that he's living in, and he's getting these political visions that are even yet future. So, that needs to be said at this point. Now, I am going to break a rule that I hate to do, and I'll explain this in a few minutes. I hate to define what these beasts are before the Bible does it, okay? But I'm going to do it anyway. It kills me, just know it. I know, it kills me, but I will come back to this, I promise. But I do want to zoom out so that way I don't lose you ahead of time, okay? But what are these 4 beasts? Well, the first thing that I'll tell you is the common understanding of this for those that are even willing to venture into the study of these things, because there's plenty of pastors and plenty of theologians that want nothing to do with it. It's too much for them. They think that you can't even really understand it ultimately, so what's the sense? And we're not going to take that approach. But for those that do attempt to understand it, one of the most common things that happens is there is a belief that what we're looking at in chapter 7 is really just a different version of chapter 2 with the succession of kingdoms after Babylon and Nebuchadnezzar and the Medo-Persian and then the Grecian Empire and all that kind of thing. Now, the statement is something like this. In chapter 2, it was Nebuchadnezzar's vision of this beautiful statue made up of different metals and all this kind of thing. And so it's man's view of God, of worldly kingdoms. What they say, is God's view of worldly kingdoms. And what man saw was some beautiful image. What God sees is a bunch of beasts. Now, that principle is true, and I think it's even true in this context, but it is not, to me, the ultimate statement of the fulfillment of chapter 2, or another version of chapter 2 at all. We're going to pick up on the words that are in this chapter that are so important, that indicate to us that this is not something that already happened. Okay, for example, we just read that this happens in the first year of Belshazzar, which means Nebuchadnezzar is dead and gone. I think we can all agree on that. It's a very simple point. If you were to jump ahead, and we'll see this in a few minutes in verse 17, it tells us that these 4 beasts are 4 kings that arise out of the earth. In the King James says it real justice. It says, they shall arise out of the earth. You ready for this? It's simple deductive reasoning. If Nebuchadnezzar is dead and gone, one of these beasts cannot represent him if he's yet to be future, right? I was hoping for more of a wow. I took a lot of time to put that together. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. But my point in saying that is, it's so easy to say something like that. Oh, it's just chapter 2 all over again. No, it's not. It might actually take some more thought process for us than just assuming it's God's vision of what we already saw in chapter 2. I think it's something much, much greater. In fact, it's all here in the text. But let's start with what we just read. And again, I just gave you the definition from God's own word that these 4 beasts are 4 kings in their kingdoms, okay? That being said, if you look at verse 3, it says, these beasts come out from the sea. Now, it's a vision, but it's only a vision of a greater reality of what they actually are. And so that being said, it's not like they're actually coming up out of the sea. And people would say, well, it would be the Mediterranean Sea because they knew nothing of the Atlantic and Pacific and all this kind of thing. Regardless, here's what we all know. If you read the Bible enough, you'll pick up on language like the fact that humanity is generally considered like a sea of people, or we would say the sea of humanity, right? So put it like this. What we're looking at are these kings that arise from the sea of humanity, not the sea as in the water. And here's one of the indicators that we have. None of these beasts, especially 3 of them, you could argue, because the 4th one's a mysterious one. 3 of these beasts are not aquatic animals. They have no tendency toward water at all. So them coming up out of the water is more than bizarre, other than it means that these kingdoms arise from the sea of humanity. So again, there's a lot more we could talk about, but I'll leave you with that. And what we're looking at in verse 7, this 4th kingdom, is terrible and dreadful, it says. It's even freakish, I would add. If you notice this 4th one, it's something that causes, again, a lion with wings, kind of crazy, right? A bear with ribs in its mouth, freaky, you know? But this 4th beast is just freakish, man. So crazy what he is seeing that he even says it was dreadful and terrible, and horns are coming out, and then one comes out and it replaces 3 that are ripped out of its head, and it's wild. Eyes coming out of it. It's freakish. And so let me say this. Again, I hate to define it all before we read it, but let's just take on some of the wording that's so crucial. Look at verse 7 for a moment. And it says that these were before the beast that we're looking at, the 4th and final beast. The 3 other beasts were before this 4th one, which for a lot of people, a classic interpretation is chronologically. But if you know the word that is actually used here, it's not chronological. Any time that the word is used before, like this here, it says Daniel stood before the king. It didn't mean he came chronologically before the king. It meant that he was standing in the presence of the king. So based on the Bible's own definition and use of this word before, it means that these are not successive kings like Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, like we've seen, but these are 3 kingdoms that are in a contemporary conglomeration with the Antichrist. And I'm jumping ahead there, but they're in contemporary conglomeration with this 4th and final beast. Now, because we know that these beasts are kings of the earth, again, I'm jumping ahead here, This fourth and final beast represents the kingdom of the Antichrist. It's freakish, it's abnormal, it's nothing like has ever been seen in the world, and nothing will be like it after. Bible's own language on that. But that being said, if I am correct, and I believe I am, these are kings, 3 of them, that are in contemporary status with the Antichrist. Who are they? Let me say right now, it's just conjecture at best, but I'm going to give you a little bit of decent conjecture. But I also believe what Pastor Chuck Smith said when he said, where the Bible is silent, we must be silent. So I am totally content with saying to you, I have no idea who they are, okay? But I also have a weird part of me that wants to try. You know what I mean? So here we go. Okay, I really don't care to try, but I'll give you this. Okay, the first one, the lion, it's placed on its 2 feet with eagle's wings in its back. Well, we know that Great Britain has always had the symbol of a lion. And again, if this was chapter 2, people would say the lions of Babylon, and certainly maybe a foreshadow. But Britain's symbol for a long, long time has been a lion on its hind feet, so kind of thing. And then they say, well, what are the wings? Well, it's believed to be that this is a confederation between America and Great Britain in the last days, and that the wings that came out of Great Britain, the freedom, the wings of the eagle of freedom came out from Great Britain. A very beautiful picture if it's true. The bear, Russia, has always been a devouring bear, so to speak, and its symbol has always been a bear, no less. So people say that would be Russia. And the leopard with 4 heads, depending on who you don't like, it might be your friend or your father-in-law. I don't know, something like that. No, I'm just kidding. But it would be fun to do that. No, the leopard with 4 heads is commonly believed to be an alliance of 4 Muslim nations, whether it's Central Asia and or the Middle East. We don't know, but that's what people surmise. Okay, so I'll say all that to say, once again, I truly believe we do know that they are contemporary with the Antichrist. We do not know who they actually are. And let me say with that, we really just don't know so much of the things that are yet future as it relates to the Bible. Daniel will write things that he doesn't understand, and the Lord will tell him, seal it up, it's not for you to know. And we, just because we have the Bible and know so much, doesn't mean we need to know everything. Are we cool with that? Some people don't believe that. Like, as a Christian, I will figure it all out in my brain. I don't know about that. That's a little extreme. I think at the end of the day, there are things that we don't know about. And it's interesting to watch things evolve over time and realize how wrong we were based on what we were surmising at a particular moment. Like, oh, I think the mark of the beast is a barcode, or it's a credit card, and all credit cards belong in hell, don't get me wrong, but that's not the thing. That's not what we're talking about here. But it's amazing how wrong people get on these kind of things. So, I say all that to say the most important thing and the most exciting thing about this reality is Daniel is what, at this point, we now look at something we call, Daniel is like the little revelation. Like what the book of Revelation is in the New Testament, Daniel is a micro version of that in the Old Testament. So if you're not prophetically inclined, if you're someone that doesn't like Bible prophecy, I get it, but you also, when are you ever going to learn if you don't try at some point, right? So let's make sure we are faithful to go through all the book of Daniel, not the first 6 chapters. We all love him in the lion's den, but do we love him in the night visions is kind of the idea. But in the night visions, there are some great things, because we don't want to get lost in the Antichrist, because here's the deal. Just like the book of Revelation, Daniel does it on a micro version, but it's still here. Anytime the Antichrist is mentioned, something so much bigger and so much more important, overarching, is the Lord Jesus Christ. And remember, the book of Revelation is literally called the revelation of Jesus Christ. It's not the book of Revelations, plural. It is the revelation of Jesus Christ. Because so many people go to the book of Revelations looking for the Antichrist, when we should be going to the book of Revelation looking for Jesus Christ, right? So again, whenever you think about the end times, don't get caught up in the horn and the eyes and the beast and the sea of people. Wait till, this is what's really exciting. And it's just like in Revelation, you see it right here. Look in verse 9. I watched till thrones were put in place, and the Ancient of Days was seated. His garment was white as snow, his hair and his head were like pure wool. His throne was a fiery flame and is like a wheel of burning fire. Only commentary I got for that is awesome. Verse 10, a fiery stream issued and came forth from before him, and 10,000 ministered to him. 10,000 times 10,000 stood before him. And the court was seated, and the books were opened. So, the big bad Antichrist is coming, and his kingdom is so overwhelming. He's like, hold the phone. Something way more epic is after that. So don't get lost on the Antichrist. Don't get lost on this fourth and final beast, because he is not the end-all, be-all. Thank God we don't read chapter 7 and it ends in verse 8, and it's like, and he dominated forever and ever and ever with that freakish kingdom. That's not what we read. The next verse literally says, he is doomed, because the big boy shows up. I added that a little bit, right? I mean, man, this is awesome. And this is so important. Again, if prophecy doesn't excite you, you have to just know that it always points back to the ultimate victory of the Lord Almighty. That's the best part of prophecy. People get so fired up in the details and trying to correlate modern news stories with what's going on and what's going to happen in Revelation. And that is not the gist of it, man. The final end focus and end goal every single time is we're going to be standing before this throne. And 10,000s of people, folks, I cannot wait to get there. Life is short. It's happening fast. It's going to go by and be done before we know it. But this is eternity we're talking about. And listen, I do not care what position I have there and then. I'm happy to be a pastor now, but I don't care if I'm a janitor up there. I mean it. Give me a push broom. And if no one ever says, are you Pastor Greg? I wouldn't care. I'd just be pushing my broom looking in the throne room though. What is going on today? I would be just as happy to be a janitor in heaven, man. Just as happy to see these things. But let alone to think that we get to be part of it. We get to be part of the 10,000 of 10,000s that are worshiping the Almighty. It's awesome. It's so awesome that I want to point out a couple things. It's really what I would call the success of the prophets of the Bible. Have you ever noticed how bold they are? I mean, even Moses with his struggle, by the time he stands before Pharaoh, he's bold as a lion. Elijah to Ahab. These different men that stand before the most powerful men in the world, and they're not afraid. And this is the secret. This is why. I heard this quote years ago, never wrote it down, always had it in memory. I wrote it in my Bible today. But someone said it, and it was so powerful to me, it just seared in my mind. It said, Moses was as thunder before Pharaoh because he was barefoot before the burning bush. He was as thunder before Pharaoh because he was barefoot before the burning bush. That is the secret. The secret is these men spent time with God and had visions of His kingdom, so that when they stood before the most powerful man on the earth, they realized there's the most powerful man of the universe, you see. So this guy's no longer scary. It's no more overwhelming to talk to this man. Because it was Charles Spurgeon who said, there is no cure for the fear of man like the fear of God. There's no cure for the fear of man like the fear of God. When you have sat before God and you have considered His glory and greatness and power, there is nothing that can stop you and I as far as ministering for Him. Where we go, what we do, what we say, nothing. Because it says it right here in verse 10, the court was seated and the books were opened. I'm going to read to you something that you and I need to hear this morning. A good reminder from Paul the Apostle. In Romans 14, verse 10, Paul says to the Romans, Christians, by the way, believers, we shall all stand before the judgment seat of Christ. And then he says, every knee, famous verse, right? Every knee will bow, every tongue will confess God. And then he says in verse 14, listen, for you and for me, forget your neighbor, forget your wife, forget your worst enemy, forget your best friend. Listen, each one of us shall give account of himself to God. You will not be holding anyone's hand on Judgment Day. No one's going to be your lawyer, your spokesperson. No one's going to help advocate for you. You are going, and I am going to have to stand before God for everything that we have done. Now, don't get me wrong. As a believer, we're not judged like, are you going to heaven or not? Like the whole time we're like, oh no. That's not the case. As a believer, our fates will be sealed. We are not in a judgment in the sense that we're going to heaven or hell, but the judgment that believers get, according to Paul, is rewards. What also means that the things that we did will be tried, as he says, by fire. And the things in our lives that weren't done with proper motivation, that were ill or bad, they'll be burned up. And we'll be standing before God by ourselves to give an account for those things. And imagine when the Lord puts the flame to your life as a Christian, and all the things you said, and all the things you did, and he lights it up and it's all gone, and there you stand before him. What are you going to say? Well, I was really bitter because of my childhood. Is that what you're going to say? You think he's going to say, oh, wow, only one like you. I never had one like you. Folks, I'm saying this because it's dreadful. It's awesome, but it's so dreadful. You and I have to do that someday. That's unbelievable to me. I don't know how nervous you've ever been being in front of important people. Some people are just so important, it's kind of overwhelming, isn't it? I can't even imagine how overwhelming that's going to be. To be in his awesome presence and the life that we lived is being examined. And he's like, what did you do with your life? Why did you waste it? Why didn't you listen to me? Why did you trade so much away for your selfish pleasures? Why? Whoosh! All of your Christian experience gone in a flame. Oh, bloop, 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 bloop. A little diamond drops out. Good for you, bud. You got something. Meanwhile, some person's walking by with a bag of crowns. You're like, well, how do they rate? Oh, they were obedient to God, you see. They were faithful with the little thing that they had. They weren't a pastor. They weren't some big-time minister. This may be a prayer warrior grandmother that no one ever knows about. But she was faithful. He was faithful. They were faithful. Friends, of all the messages that we can think about on a given Sunday, don't ever forget that. Don't ever forget that you're going to stand before God. No one has ever freaked me out by saying, Pastor, better be careful, keep your pride in check. What, to somebody else? I don't care. What dominates my worries is standing before God, man. Because I can pull the wool over your eyes and you can do that to me. You can trick me, you can lie to me, I can lie to you. We're human beings, we're sinful. No one gets away with anything with God. And that's the one we stand before. And Paul tells us, every one of you will give an account someday. You can laugh now, you can cry now. One day, you and I will stand before the Ancient of Days. Whew. Wow. Be pretty cool if he gave me a golden push broom. Wouldn't it? Greg, you did okay. Here's your push broom. Get to work. Thank you, Father. Man. I wonder if he'll let me joke with him, by the way, on that day. He might do like people do with me sometimes. Go ahead, give me a joke, and let's get that out of the way, and let's get down to business, you know. Lord, there were 3 guys that came to heaven, you know, or something like that. Yeah. He's like, I planted that thought in your head, actually. Listen, I don't want to be dramatic. I don't want to be over the top. But listen, friends, I mean, I'm serious. I'm 36, which depending on how old you are and how you see life, some people 36 is like, you're old, bro, you're irrelevant, right? Some people you're like, you young whippersnapper, right? But I'm 36, man, and I know what that means to me. I'm halfway there. Tank, half empty. That's where I'm at. Some of you are like, no, it's 3/4, trust me. Or 7/8, just a little, no. According to the average, I'm halfway. All I can tell you at 36 is that went fast. It's like I have a couple memories from childhood, cool memories in the recent past. My kids were just babies, and now it's going fast, rapidly. So if I'm halfway, I'm thinking, well, this show's going to be over soon. And I'm 36. This show's going to be over soon. So I don't know how old you are, but this show's going to be over soon. You know what I'm saying? Like, all kidding aside, this show's going to be over soon. We're going to be out of here soon. And the books are going to be open, and we're going to be standing before Him. That's awesome. And there's no, like, small thing as to why that's here. Well, let me say one more thing, and we can move on. In verse 15, after this all takes place, jumping ahead just for a moment, Daniel said, I was grieved in my spirit, within my body, and the visions of my head troubled me. Jump ahead to the end of chapter 8. Chapter 8, verse 27. Vision goes on. I, Daniel, fainted and was sick for days after, and I arose and went about the king's business. I fainted and I was sick for days. Some of you are thinking, if this Bible study keeps going like this, I'm going to faint and be sick for days. Now, that's okay. Why do I tell you that? Why do I emphasize what's right here before us? Because didn't you notice with me that Daniel wasn't freaked out by any of the kings that he stood before? It was always on his terms. They took him and they took his identity and his household and his wealth, everything they took from him. And the only time he drew a line in the sand is when, like, you're going to eat this pagan meat. He says, absolutely not. I will not defile my relationship with God with that dirty pagan meat. I'll eat salad and carrots. Give it to me. That's what I'm going to eat. He's not negotiating. He's not like, ooh, I hope they listen. I don't want to get in trouble. Here's the deal, folks. This is what I'm eating. And that's all that I'm eating. They're like, okay, Daniel. You know, just so you know, Babylon didn't have like a meal plan that you could like forsake. The part of eating the pagan meat, you understand, was allegiance to Babylon. You don't say to Babylon, no, thanks, I'll take my own way. And yet he did. And you know what? They're like, all right, whatever, dude. He never yielded his relationship to God to these kings. He never feared those kings. But yet, when he has a vision from God, he is terribly afraid, overwhelmed by the whole thing. Good indicator, I would say. Pretty amazing. Well, verse 11, he says, I watched then because of the sound of the pompous words which the horn was speaking. I watched till the beast was slain and its body destroyed and given to the burning flame. Yeah, it's going to be over for him. Verse 12, as for the rest of the beasts, they had their dominion taken away, yet their lives were prolonged for a season and a time. If you know the book of Revelation, the 1,000-year reign of Christ, this is Christ coming back, destroying the Antichrist, and these other kings, these proxies, whatever you want to call them, they will have... They'll have their dominion, their power taken away, but they'll still exist during the millennial reign of Christ. Maybe some of you don't fully make that correlation, but that's just a 30,000-foot view of it. But note with me in verse 11, and we already saw it in verse 8. The end of verse 8, look at it. He had a mouth speaking pompous words. Look at it again in verse 11. He spoke pompous words. These are great words, wonderful words. Amazing words. We read on later, we'll see this more. We'll talk more about the Antichrist and understand him in the weeks to come. But he will be charming and handsome and attractive to the world. So listen, you ready for this? This is one of my favorites. I came up with this on my own. As far as eliminating candidates for the position of Antichrist. You ready? I don't want to even say anybody, but people are already saying names. But people are like, don't you know that the president or this guy or the former president or the vice president, they're probably the Antichrist? That guy is so ugly, and he cannot put two words together that make sense. I'm pretty sure he's not the Antichrist. See what I mean? It's kind of fun. So whenever your friends are like, did you know that? Oh, they're the Antichrist? Well, I don't think so. Because their words are divisive and no one likes them, right? Seemingly. So just do with it. Just like what I'm saying is like take that understanding of the Antichrist, and then whenever you or someone else is tempted to say, maybe this person's the Antichrist, look at their pedigree and say, nothing attractive about him, and their words are not great. Their words are kind of falling short. Elon Musk. I don't understand much of what he says the first 2 times around. Then you go and then you like do a separate math equation. You're like, oh, I get it. That's not a guy the world's looking for. Sputtering around, muttering sayings that like are broken and detached. So, the Antichrist, though, will be someone who speaks pompous words. A little information here. Think about, okay? How easy is it nowadays for a non-politician to be a global leader? It's really a phenomenon. Actually, just take the Trump effect. Trump is a businessman. And there's only, I think, 5, maybe 6 presidents in U.S. history that weren't directly linked to politics prior to the presidency. It's kind of an amazing fact. But what we're seeing with like the Trump era that we're in right now is there's a reality that people don't even care if you're in politics. In fact, a lot of people are saying, I don't trust politicians. So how easy is it going to be for the Antichrist to not be a politician at all? Because for years I've heard, and people will say, well, I think the Antichrist is probably in the political wing somewhere right now as we speak. No. If we want to be super up to date right now, friends, with the modern social media age, check it out. How easy will it be for someone to suddenly sort of arise with all of the answers, having never been attached to politics whatsoever? It's easy to see now, isn't it? We see overnight success, but I'd also add, most of the overnight successes that we see are people that have been dormant for 10 or 20 years, shaping their craft, and by the time we recognize them, they've been a decade or 2 behind the scenes grinding away. So what I'm saying is it very realistic to believe that the Antichrist is alive right now? Yes. Does he have anything to do with politics? He doesn't need to have any dealings with politics. What's going to happen is a series of catastrophes with the world, and people are going to be looking for a leader globally. And he is going to rise. That's what we keep picking up, the language of global leadership. And he is going to rise to power with solutions that are tangible, that are powerful, and he's convincing. Again, Hitler, one-man band essentially, led a nation to slaughter people based on their race or their religious beliefs or their sexuality. I mean, he killed gays and lesbians, right? He convinced people to just kill them, and they did. That was a man, no doubt inspired by the devil, but not the Antichrist. We can't even imagine the kind of power and influence the Antichrist is going to have. It's really terrifying. But I believe he's going to get instant recognition, and he's going to have a major platform and rapid growth. Again, just for what it's worth, I'm going to throw this in here if I haven't already lost you. Events like millions of people disappearing all of a sudden. Because I believe, and I say I believe it based on the scriptures, that the rapture of the church happens before the man of sin is revealed according to the Thessalonians, right? We're taken out of here. So check it out, friends. Just imagine tomorrow morning you woke up and you were here and millions of people are disappearing. They disappeared. Gone. They're gone. That's creepy, right? What do? And then all of a sudden, we've been talking about aliens, or we're not sure if there's mass kidnappings, and maybe it was this nation, and then there's all of a sudden wars start and economic collapse is happening, and then whoosh, a man rises and he says, I have the solutions. We need to do this, we need to do that, we need to do the other thing. Do not forget our capacity to be deceived as human people. I say that as someone that is it's deeply important to me that we have integrity with one another, that we're honest with each other. But do not forget the capacity that we have to be deceived. I'm going to give you one story to illustrate. There's so many more we could share. How many of you know who Oz Perlman is? Did I introduce you to him? I did. Okay. One man, and I introduced him to him. Okay, that's not good. Here we go. Oz Perlman is considered to be the world's greatest mentalist. What's amazing about Oz is he admits before he starts every show, any act, whatever he's doing, I am not a mind reader. I read people. But I'm not a mind reader. I'm not a psychic. I don't have supernatural powers. I just read people. Okay? But the stuff that he does is so mind-bending. You're like, how does he do it? And he's so crafty. He said to Joe Rogan, he said, look, I sell the sizzle, not the steak. All right? I sell the sizzle, not the steak. I'm not trying to tell you how I do what I do. I sell the sizzle, not the steak. He's good. He's real good. Okay? So let me give you one example of how Oz Perlman works. Tells a story about how he went into this, because he's hired to go into these different venues and places, sometimes private parties for billionaires or big venues all over the world, thousands of people. And he can literally just control the environment and tell you like what your PIN code is, what your mother's middle name is. I mean, all sorts, like, how did you know that? And he'll be like, well, when I asked you, you looked twice, which tells me it's a short name, and then you stuttered at the first letter, so it probably starts with an M, and you're like, okay? Now some of you are going to know who Oz Perlman is, aren't you? You're going to like, I got to look this guy up. Look, here's a story from him. He goes into this room with 24 executives. And he had the specific number because he knew that he's like, if more people came in the room, I did not want to be confused by that. And certainly, sure enough, he planned for it. More than several people came in the room after the fact. So he knew that he was dealing with 24 people. And he wanted to memorize all of their names. Because you and I know how challenging that can be. When you meet someone, they're like, hey, my name is... What? And then you go to say their name and it's just not in your head. So he wants to show them, I have memorized all of your names. And not only that, the company that you work for, because there are 24 executives from different companies. And so he starts going around the room. He's like, I mean, Jerry, I love your company, whatever it's called. That's really incredible. It reminds me of Susan over here and her company as he's systematically going through. Could you imagine having just met this man? 1, 2, 12, 15, 16, 19, 20, 23. He gets to the 24th person and he goes, oh, shoot. You, oh man, let's see. He uses it all as a setup to say, Steve, I could never forget about you and your quantums lab that you work with and all this kind of stuff. And the room just goes crazy. And he says, guys, I'm not someone with supernatural powers. I looked up the roster of the people that were going to be in this room today, and I memorized your names in the hotel room the night before. So I saw a picture of your face, and I memorized it, and I looked at your name. So when I met you, it helped me lock it in, but I had already memorized all of your names the night before. But if he did not tell you that fact, you and I would be left stumped trying to figure out how did he walk into a room, greet 24 people, and memorize all of their names instantly. You would have thought, you would have been deceived in believing this man remembered instantaneously 24 people's different names. He had studied it and prepared for it long beforehand because he sells the sizzle, not the steak, right? I'm telling you right now, the Antichrist is going to sell the sizzle, not the steak. We are not know how he's going to do it. In fact, what's even crazier is he's not just going to have little mental tricks that he's playing. He's going to have supernatural demonic power at his beck and call. And the things that he's going to do, like being assassinated and coming back to life, the world's going to be primed for it, ready for deception. Okay, 4 minutes. 13. Let's read on here for a moment. I was watching in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man, coming with the clouds of heaven. He came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. Then to him was given dominion, glory, and a kingdom. Then all peoples, nations, and language should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion, which shall not pass away, and his kingdom, the one which shall not be destroyed. You see it again, friends? It's not about the Antichrist kingdom. We need to know it. It's going to happen. It's going to come, and it's going to go. But there's one kingdom that lasts forever. Let me say it like this for this morning. The United States of America is not that last kingdom on the earth. No, it's not. And thankfully, it's the kingdom of our Lord Jesus Christ, right? Thankfully. So, note with me in here, the Ancient of Days is mentioned. In fact, people go as far to say the Ancient of Days, the way that this language is like the Father, the Son of Man, the Son, and then the Holy Spirit isn't mentioned, but that's normal because he's always at work, but he remains nameless, so to speak. But you have God in perfection here. And I take note with you the title used in Daniel, the Son of Man, given all dominion and power and glory. Now, what's interesting about the Son of Man title is that it just speaks of him being human. It's a humble title. So what's interesting, when the Lord Jesus walks on the earth, he will use this title for himself, the Son of Man. Which, given the fact that he's God, deity in human flesh, that's a very humble statement for him to say, I'm the Son of Man. But at the same time, it's awesome in that he's claiming to have dominion over the entire world. The Pharisees could not stand that he called himself the Son of Man, you understand, right? He says, I, the Son of Man. You want to know how many times he calls himself the Son of Man in the gospel accounts? You guys know? Ask chat BLT later. You know what it'll tell you? Over 80 times. Over 80 times, the Son of Man, the Son of Man, the Son of Man, the Son of Man, the Son of Man. I get the idea that when the Lord was here on earth talking to the Pharisees, he's like, I am the Son of Man. They're like, show us a trick. I'm the Son of Man. I'm the Son of Man. It's like, know who you're dealing with. So the Lord was very explicit in calling himself the Son of Man many times. And all dominion, all everlasting dominion are his, right? We read these verses here, 14 and 15, or 14 specifically. You guys know in Revelation 19:16, you come to church here any length of time, I always love to talk about the fact, in Revelation 19:16, on the Lord's thigh, as he's riding on his great horse to come back and destroy this Antichrist, as he's coming down, his robe slips up just a little bit. You know what I'm going to say, right? And on his thigh is written, booyah. No, it's written, it says King of Kings and Lord of Lords. That thigh tattoos in and of themselves are awesome. That thigh tattoo is incredible, isn't it? King of Kings and Lord of Lords. I think we get the idea. He's awesome. He's awesome. Dominion that lasts forever. Not the Antichrist, his dominion. Now, the last thing I want to say without even reading ahead, it's in verse 15 and 16, but I really don't have time to... 16. He was worried, and it said, he made known to me the interpretation of these things. This is how I want to end this morning, intentionally. Ready? He made known to me these things. What I'm saying is, I just took all this time to define all of the things that we read. But I hate doing that, like I told you early on, because I much prefer the Bible to do that for us. One of the reasons people get so off and so wrong is they'll read the beast and they'll say, I think I know what it is. I do too. It's right there in verse 17. You see what I mean? I think that it's Nebuchadnezzar. I think it's verse 17. Do you see what I mean? There's something that Pastor Chuck Smith did years ago that I can even now, I can hear it in my mind. It echoes in my mind. But the old Calvary Chapel trick is this. If you are confused by the passage that you are reading, you need 20/20 vision. You ever heard of it? You read 20 verses before it or 20 verses after it, and you'll usually find the answer therein. 20/20 vision. Go back 20 verses, go ahead 20 verses, and you'll usually find the thing you're actually looking for, believe it or not. So if you're reading about these beasts and you're like, what does it all mean? A few verses later, it's like, well, this is what it means. Oh, who would have thought we could do that? That the Bible would tell us what it says. I mean, I just love that, don't you? But Pastor Chuck Smith in a Bible study years ago, defining different doctrines that people have and trying to understand the balance betwixt them all, he read a verse. Okay, the particular study was about the sovereignty of God and the free will of man. How does it all balance out? Where does it all fit in the scriptures? And he reads the verse. that reflects, man's responsibility. Work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. And so people stop there and they say, oh, we know what that means. We know what that means. But if you read the next verse, it is God who both works in and to do his good pleasure inside of you. Wait, well, what is it? Is it us doing the work or him? But when he read, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling, he paused. He explained some things and he said, this is the part that echoes in my mind. Read on, brother. I can hear it whenever I'm like, oh Lord, what does it mean? I hear Chuck Smith, read on, brother. So I pray to God, if you're ever studying the Bible, you hear that echo in your mind. What does it mean? What does it mean? I wonder what Pastor Greg thinks. Read on, brother. And may you go to your grave hearing that, man. What do they think? What does the commentator say? Read on, brother. Read on. And that's what we need to do. So again, I violated my own thing today. But we'll pick up there next week and validate it all. So let's stand and pray.